Hi there, my name is Kelly Cody Grimm,
And I'm Max Grimm.
and we are Creative Actors Lab. What we want to do is just talk a little bit about how you can bring creativity into your everyday life.
And hello, everybody. This is Max from Creative Actors Lab, going solo this time. And for everybody listening to this, if you have ever been a student of Kelly or Kelly and I, you've heard a lot of our stories and just kind of the dreams that we have had for Creative Actors Lab. It's been a very challenging few years with COVID and all that sort of a thing, and just all the changes that it brought into this world. I lost a very dear family member to COVID, and it was very trying. It was very, very trying. During that time, we managed the acting classes went, as you guys know, onto Zoom, and we wound up at the point that that I ceased being active so much is I think we had seen about 600 students altogether, people from all over the country, people that we never would have met had COVID not come along. And in that way, that was one of the few good things that came out of it. And we started to look at forming our own sort of a thing. Creative Actors Lab is what is coming out of this. And it is a continual process. It will never stop evolving, or at least and that's my feeling about all creative endeavors, about all art, is that you have to keep moving, you have to keep evolving. Now you have to, preserve the classics and hone your technique and all that sort of thing. But at the same time, you have to keep moving. You have to keep taking chances. Some of it's not going to work. Some of it's going to fail. But it's like the line from the song. It's like I'm gonna win some or learn some. And just my journey in acting has been, I think, one of the greatest educations I've ever had. And I would like to, and let me start off with this, say, it was my hope and wish and desire at this time last year to actually bring people together in some kind of a live format and do things like experimental theater and improvisation and developing new works and actually having some kind of a festival to where people are coming back together. People are actually physically getting in the same place at the same time and meeting face to face. We've had all these students, I mean, some really, really sweet, dear, lovely people that we've never met in person. And I would like to rectify that. As I want to move forward, the thing that I really have to be mindful of is that when I did go to start my own theater company when I was about 21 years old, and all the stuff that happened and the cool stuff that happened and the trying stuff that happened, I have to look back and go, what was really cool? What am I going to do again this time when I go to make this incarnation of Creative Actors Lab? And what's the stuff I don't want to do again? What stuff happened that I don't want to repeat? It's like the old saying, if you don't know your history, you are destined to repeat it. And there's some of the history I would like to repeat, and there's some of the history from back then when I was, this is probably about 1983, that I started this. And basically how it came about is, I've always been a very shy person, contrary to my appearance, contrary to however I may appear outwardly. I'm still to this day a very shy person. I spent years upon years doing live theater in front of hundreds and sometimes thousands of people, and I'm still very shy. And I remember how it started, in that originally I just always wanted to act, but I just never did. And at the time, I was in art school and I was in a relationship with a young lady and we were engaged at the time. And let's just say I wasn't happy with any of it. And I don't think she was either. And a lot of my fellow students in art school were not happy with the way things were going on and how the programs were being implemented and so forth. So in pretty short order, I dropped out of art school, much to my parents' chagrin. The young lady and I, who actually we still stay in touch, we're still on good terms, but we broke up that day. And this happened on a Friday. On the same day, my cat, who had been sick, basically passed away that day. And it's like, and the girlfriend and I got into a huge, massive blow up fight. We broke up. My cat died, and I'm out of art school. And I told my parents, I'm going to go take acting class. I'm going to go study theater. And that went over, let's just say, not particularly well. I remember my mother saying something to the effect of referring to this as that acting crap, as she put it. And at that point, I was so unhappy, and I wanted to go and do something to pursue something that, I really had always been very passionate about, but never acted upon. So my girlfriend and I broke up on a Friday. I had already registered for school, and I went to community college. And the following Monday, there I am in my first theater class. And I started, I think it was like an introduction to theater history and a pantomime class. So I got into it and just was, as the saying goes, I got bitten by the acting bug. And for the next couple of years, I poured myself into it. I did one acts, I did children's theater, I did all the background TV work. Miami Vice was just coming around at that time. And a bunch of movies were coming into the South Florida area where I lived. And I just poured myself into it. I was taking acting classes. I got to a point where I was working at my college theater in the scene shop, actually building scenery and hanging lights and stuff like that. I was doing children's theater. I was in a dance company for a year, of all things. I actually did ballet for a while and modern dance. And I was on stage, backstage, just everything that I could get into. The first play I was ever in college, we actually got a standing ovation, and that was it. That was it. I'm sold. I'm done. I know what I'm going to be doing now. But for this very shy kid to all of a sudden be standing up in front of a room full of people on a platform, and people are standing up and going, "Oh, that was so wonderful," was just transformative, for lack of a better word. After a time, it was towards the end of my time going to school there, but I took a directing class. And we staged a play in this little black box theater we had. And I remember I did two things. It was one called Servants of the People by Lawrence Ferlinghetti, which actually took place in the actual audience itself. And a play, I have been told, was written by Samuel Beckett, but I've never actually seen it in print. And this may be completely wrong, but it was called Garbage. And basically that was a bare stage. And there's a whole ton of garbage and junk and broken furniture and everything that basically, and I had a ton of people working with me. I think I might have had like 15, 16 or something fellow student actors in there. And Servants of the People was actually a play that took place in the audience, and it was a political rally that just fell into anarchy and chaos and war, and it all happened in the audience, and it was crazy. And then in the play Garbage, the lights would come up on a bare stage, and from off stage, people were throwing garbage, literally a pile of garbage that in the course of 2.5 minutes got to be about 3 feet high. And it was actually one of the funniest things I've ever seen. One of my professors actually was literally on the floor on his knees, pounding the floor with his hands, just holding his sides in laughter. And I went, I just fell in love with directing. I just fell in love with directing. And after the run of the show, a bunch of people that I worked with came up to me and they said, "Dude, we loved working with you, and you just the way you talk to people and all that." And one guy said, "Why don't you start a theater company?" And I went, "Yes." And so that was at the beginning of summer, much like it is now. And so I had this idea in my head, and, so I say, this was the early 80s in Miami Beach. There was no Google, there was no internet, there was no cell phones, there was no any of that. And so summers in Miami would get so oppressively hot that you pretty much stayed inside all day until the sun went down and temperature got a bit more reasonable. But I basically, that summer, when I was not working in my college theater, I was at home. And I wrote letters on like an actual typewriter. I call all over. I called the National Endowment for the Arts I mean, just the local government and the public arts programs and Dramatists Play Service and Samuel French Publishing, and on and on and on and on. And I compiled over the course of that summer this huge notebook of handwritten notes of phone numbers and addresses and conversations that I had had with people, and I really put myself out there. Because as I say, for a shy kid to do what I had just done in the last couple of years was at one point in my life absolutely unthinkable. There'd be no way a shy kid like me would start doing that stuff. But, and then as it seems with most things, at least in my life, is that I will have these ideas, these dreams, these aspirations, and so forth. That you don't do the stuff alone. No person is an island. It doesn't work that way. And I just started to knock on doors, and eventually one thing fell in place. I found this little bitty art gallery, this funky little art gallery, and I walked in one day and I said, "Would you guys consider doing plays here?" And I was like, "That's cool." And once that one part of the puzzle fell in line, pretty much everything else fell in line at the same time. And which is kind of just, it seems that's how it goes. Like one thing clicks, one door opens, and all of a sudden it's like, you turn on the faucet and Niagara Falls comes pouring out. So I staged two shows. They were a play called Rats by Israel Horovitz and The Holy Ghostly by Sam Shepard. And they were really funky, experimental, avant-garde, type of things that I just loved. And we could cram about 30 people into this art gallery in this little bitty stage. And, we used, it just, all this, it was just crazy. Now, but during the rehearsal of that, and the neighborhood now, the Miami Beach neighborhood right now is what is known as South Beach, or SoBe, where they have the Wine and Food Festival and all of that stuff. Let's just say, in the early '80s, when they were beginning trying to revitalize Miami Beach, because at the south end it was rough. It was a rough place, but these developers are coming in, buying these really crummy buildings and dumping all this money into it, and just trying to bring this arts community. I remember me and a friend of mine making a short film in front of this dilapidated mansion that had been deserted, and it was like a squatting sort of a thing for homeless people. That mansion later became Gianni Versace's mansion, where he actually got shot. We made a short film in front of this place before he ever showed up, and it was dilapidated, and we had street people and drug addicts and prostitutes going around us and the whole thing. But the powers that be were trying to get artists to come into the neighborhood, and just to start some kind of revitalization. So it was, when I got there, and me and a bunch of other people went down into this neighborhood to try to make stuff happen, it was rough. And I was young, and there was one day I stupidly left my guard down, and I would come into the art gallery in the afternoons. The guy who had been working at the gallery, it was his venture. He was at a point of like, he just didn't want to do it anymore. So he pretty much let me come in and do whatever I wanted to do, so long as I paid rent on time, which was, I think, $200 a month. That's how long ago that was. But we got the space, and there was one day I would come in and have all my stuff with me, and I had this backpack, and I had the handwritten notes. The whole thing was in there, and I just one day, for whatever brain dead reason, I came in, I got all my stuff. I was hungry. There was like a little diner like 2 doors down, and I was like, let me just go in there and grab something really quick and bring it back. So I left all the stuff in there, and I forgot to lock the door. And guess what? My stuff got stolen. My backpack full of stuff got stolen. Yes, they got my car keys. Yes, they got my wallet. I had to get a new Social Security card, driver's license, all that stuff. But they got the handbook, the book of handwritten notes that I had spent literally months compiling on my own. it would have been, I can understand they wanted my car. I can understand they wanted my wallet. I can understand that. But they took my notes. And I had to start completely from scratch. And I felt so violated. And then a couple of days later, guess what? They stole my car. I had to change. I had the locks changed on the gallery. I had the locks changed on my parents' house. But a couple of days later, they stole my car, which I wound up getting back a couple of days later. But regardless, they took my notes, and that broke my heart. That just, I was so angry and I was so heartbroken. I mean, as I say, I can understand if they want the car and the money. But this stuff had whoever these people were, this stuff had no value to them. That just hurt. I have no other words I can expound, but that just hurt. And I got the car back a couple of days later, and it was they had joy-ridden the crap out of it. The officers told me, that whoever it was that stole it, these people were sitting on the hood of the car. It was parked. They had the keys to the car in their pocket. But being that they were not sitting in the car itself, they could not be arrested. And they got my notebook. And I think it was that day that something in me really clicked, at least in that period of time. And I think that's the day I think I really became the angry young man theater guy. And it was not like I'm going to start punching people out and yelling at people and, tirading and being a tyrant or any of that. But I was just like, okay, and I think that's the day that what I come to realize now, that's kind of the day that I went from being an actor, I went from being an artist to now this is like spiritual warfare. At that point, there was something in me that had just clicked, and I was like, I'm not looking back, and I'm going to do this, and I don't care. And I remember having a very serious conversation with God. And I was an atheist at that point in my life. I mean, I started talking to God. And I was like, how dare you? And I was just like, I don't care if you put an effing tornado in my way. I'm going to kick my way through it. I was so mad. And the show got going. And one of my instructors from college, actually, she was a theater critic. The publication was the Miami News, which has long since gone away. But I started speaking with her, and she started turning me on to all these people. And she helped with a lot of things. I had a friend of mine let me speak with their attorney about what I should do. And it's just once those events happened, the whole thing just clicked. The local CBS news station actually started following me. I was getting written up in the paper. I was, the reporter, her name was Robin, and I don't remember her last name, but I just remember she was very interested in the whole thing, and she was coming out. She interviewed me multiple times. I was on the news. I was so busy, I never saw it. And I don't think we had a VHS recorder at that time, but I never saw it. But I poured myself into this, and this is what I did. And I saved and scrimped money. I begged, borrowed, and I didn't steal, but I begged and borrowed. People started coming to the show. And I was like, my God. And during that time, I would just kind of leave the doors open during the rehearsal process. I would just leave the doors open. One night, this lady walks in, this older lady, and I mean, you could tell there was some mental health challenges, to put it mildly. And she starts asking me, "What am I doing?" And this lady starts going off into full histrionic crazy person mode, and she's talking about how she has visions, and you must be this. And she starts telling me, this is what you must do. You must do this 24 hours a day, and she just gave me this whole. I mean, this was out of the movies, kids. I mean, just this lady, this person just sat there for 20 minutes and started telling me all these prophecies that she was having of me, and why this theater was so important, and why this is what I must do. And I'm just listening to her going, I just was speechless. And then at some point, a younger person comes in and goes, Grandma, come on, Grandma, let's go back home. And this young person starts apologizing to me, and I'm like, no, please don't apologize. I really needed to hear that. And there was another guy, his name was Richard. He was a violinist. He was blind due to alcohol poisoning, but he played violin out on the open air mall, and he just put out the hat, and he was, people would throw money in it, and he started coming by really pretty much every night. And he was blind, and he had the glasses and the black hat and the black jacket and this raggedy beaten up violin, and he told me, like, he had worked on Wall Street, and just, it was such pressure that he just basically drank himself into alcohol poisoning. His wife left him, and he got fired, and he somehow or another lost everything and wound up going from Wall Street to this crummy, at that time, part of Miami Beach, and just playing violin. And the guy was happy. And he just was telling me all this stuff. And I remember one day he came in and he said he was in the middle of playing J.S. Bach. Some sonata he was playing, and he broke in a string on his violin broke, and he was able to, on the spot, without missing a note, transpose everything and finished the piece playing on just the 3 strings. And he was so happy. He was so, it was like this was his superpower. And there was just something at that time, like, I really needed to be around people like that. I really needed that. And I look back on that now, and I got the show open. I think we ran for 3 weeks, if I remember correctly. And in the middle of it all, I started doing 2 things. I got an onstage non-singing role in a major opera for the Greater Miami Opera, and I wound up working with a director by the name of Francesca Zimballo, who all this time, for all these years later, I think she and one other person, Mary Ellen O'Brien, who was a professor at Florida International University, these 2 people really inspired me as a director. I mean, more than anyone or anything. Just these 2 women were so inspiring. I wound up working with her, and that was one of the best productions I've ever been associated with. At the same time, I wound up working for another company whose name I'll not mention. But if you were an actor in Miami in the early 80s, and there's a certain classical theater company down there that was famous for screwing people over. Yeah, I worked for them too. But it was simultaneously, I had my own show, my own production, finishing up the last couple of weeks. And then I started getting into the opera and the Shakespeare company. And it was the worst production I've ever been involved in. We were treated so badly. That's a story in and of itself, but I was just at this point, and I'm 21 years old, and all of a sudden, like, people are coming to my show in this funky little art gallery, and I am simultaneously involved with the best production I've ever worked in and the worst production I've ever worked in. And all I can say is, at that time, it was the greatest education I ever got. And I look back on it now, I am so grateful. But I remember it got so stressful at one point that I just remember spontaneously just crying, just because I was so stressed, I was so tired, I was so burned out. but I look back on that time now, quite frankly, I would not have traded that for anything, with no disrespect to anyone. And school is a wonderful thing. Education is a wonderful, marvelous thing. And if you've got good teachers in acting or whatever subject you're in, it's go study, 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 learn, 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 and do. But quite frankly, the experience I had back then, just all those obstacles and all that tiredness and all of that just digging deep, I would not trade it for anything. And that was about 40 years ago. And a lot has happened since then, things happen. I've produced things, and I've written so much poetry. I have a book out there of poetry that, I've been a photographer and a visual artist, and I've done solo art shows. I've been in exhibits. I've done performance art. I've worked in all these different situations and environments where it's like my skill set has gotten so big. I've become a really good problem solver, and I know that I have the perseverance to do whatever needs to be done, so long as it is worthy of my energy and my effort. And one thing, just as a tangent, I will say, I've said this to a lot of the students we've had, like new students particularly, where they will say, or someone will put it to them, where, you don't have a lot of experience. So, we don't really want to pay you for this, or you're not going to get paid much. And they go, oh, okay. Like, no. Anybody who says that to you as an actor, or really as anything, but I'm speaking in the context of acting and theater and movies and stuff like that here. But your time, your energy, your attention, and your work ethic are very valuable. Even if you have zero experience, don't ever, ever underestimate yourself. Do not ever undervalue yourself. Because if anything that 40 years has taught me, that 61 plus years of living, the most precious thing is your attention, your energy, your work ethic. That's so valuable. Don't ever, ever, ever shortchange yourself. And as I look back now and I'm going, I want to do all this again. But what did I do different? What would I do differently now? What do I want to repeat? And it's a journey. And I never really thought I'd want to go back to this again, but lo and behold, here we are. And I want to finish this off by saying, as I started, I want Creative Actors Lab to grow and expand and evolve and do stuff we haven't done before. And as I really have always liked, in a classroom or in a production where I may be directing, it's like I really believe in creating a safe space to do dangerous work. Because without the risks, you're not going to learn. You're not going to grow. And one thing that has frustrated me so much over the years, is like, I remember the kind of theater we were doing back in the early 80s, and it was a lot of Sam Shepard and David Mamet and Linford Wilson and Israel Horovitz and people like that. I remember doing a play one time. I produced it called Orgasmo Adulto Escapes from the Zoo by Dario Fo. But and it was a crazy production. I had one of my drama teachers back then. He had been teaching for many, many years, and he wound up getting into this one-man show. And I went to see it, and even by his own admission, it was not very good. But I went to it. I sat in the front row. I walked up to him afterwards. I said all these, positive things. I wasn't going to blow smoke up his or any of that. But I was very positive. And he said something to me. He's like, I've been sitting at the college in my ivory tower, just sitting there and telling people what to do, but I have not had the guts to take these same risks myself And here I am, I get pushed into it, and I just don't have the courage you guys do. And that was another thing that really stuck with me. Is just one of my teachers, who I really, really like the guy. He was just a very gentle soul and a very creative person, and he really knew his stuff. But he said that to me, and I just was like, wow. So here we go again. And I will say this, guys, if you're hearing this, if you have any ideas, if you have any resources of which you can share, if you have any words of wisdom, guidance, people who you think may in some form or fashion be interested in being involved with this in some way or other, please shout out, please holler at me, please holler at Kelly. I just, the thing that's, just to complete my thought, the thing that's frustrated me is I remember the theater that we used to do, and I've looked back and I've seen some of the people that, I was running in the same circles with them. And not to be critical, but to be truthful, they're still continuing to do theater, but they're doing the exact same shows they were doing 30 years ago, 40 years ago. And it's like, it's too safe, it's lazy, and it's not going to evolve. That's not how you evolve. You don't evolve. You don't grow by sitting in the same spot, doing the same stuff over and over and over because it's safe. And I will say for you guys, if you have any aspirations towards this, get out there and do it. Don't wait for it to happen. Find your own, get involved in other people's projects, but look at making your own. And when you need it, and you will, don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be ashamed. This is an art form. We need each other. And I do this, and I came back to it because of a love in me that has never died. And it's just, for my own selfish purposes, it's the coolest thing that when you were teaching or when you're directing, because they're two very different things. They're two very, very different animals. But when you are teaching or directing and you say something, or you give somebody a direction, or you give them an idea, or you give them some kind of food for thought, or whatever you do, and you see the light bulb go off over the top of the head, and just they have that aha moment. It is the greatest thing in the world, and that's why you do this. That's why you teach. That's why you direct, is to have people go, yeah. And then you get a room full of people all having their personal epiphanies and light bulb moments and all that, and then you put them all together in the same place at the same time, and you get them to listen to each other and play nice and agree to disagree. And as my wife will say, it's my job to make you look good and your job to make me look good. And when you have that environment, when you create that safe space to do dangerous work, it is the coolest thing I've ever experienced outside of watching my children be born. That's the thing that I think, or one of the few things that I think surpasses my feeling about the arts and theater. And because it's such a collaborative effort, we need each other. We need each other. And I've got visions for this. I have ideas for this, and I want to be able to bring other people in and share my ideas, and then they start sharing theirs, and we all get together. And that's what I want to do here. That's what, and I don't know how long it's going to take, and I don't know what form it's going to take, but that's what I want. That's what I feel is very important. And if you've stuck with the video this long, thank you guys for listening to this. But I can't help but say I feel that we live in a world right now. We need more artists. We need more poets. We need more people training their voices, so to speak, and how to communicate their messages and how to get what is in here and here out of here and into the world and make a positive difference. Because I believe we can, and I believe the world is in a place right now. It's some of the most important work we can do. Thank you guys for listening. I love you. Until next time.
We appreciate you guys tuning in, and keep in mind that you can catch us on our social media, Creative Actors Lab on Instagram and Facebook, and by the same name on YouTube. And for more on what we do, you can go to our website,
CreativeActorsLab.com, all one word. Thank you for listening. Stay curious, makeart.org. Much love until next time.